Hello and welcome. This is the first of a series of Boise School Board candidate forums that we're sponsoring here with the Boise Metro Chamber of Commerce. I'm Kevin Richert. I'm a reporter with Idaho EdNews, and we're pleased to be a partner on this series of virtual forums. You'll be hearing from the four candidates in race number one. The way this works is the four candidates are going to be running on the same ballot on September 6th. The top two vote getters will be elected to 6-year terms. You'll be hearing from all four candidates here in the next hour. We have Krista Hazler and Beth Oppenheimer and Greg Woodard. Dave Wagers had a time conflict and will be catching up with us about 15 minutes in, so you will see him shortly. I'm going to begin by allowing each of the candidates to kind of briefly give us an introduction, tell us a little bit about themselves and how their life experience informs their candidacy for school board. And Krista, why don't I start with you? We'll go in alphabetical order and we'll go from there and start jumping into questions after that.
Great. Thank you so much, Kevin. I'm Krista Hassler, and I am a mom of 4 Boise School District students. So I think that in and of itself is a fairly big life experience that I've got. I've got 4 students who are in the district right now. I'm very invested in our school district and the direction it's going. I also have a background. I've got a master's degree in social work, and I worked as a therapist with teenagers who were in residential treatment. So kids that have kind of hit their bottom, they couldn't live at home anymore. And they came and lived in our program, and there was a school there, and I worked with them through the school to build back up. So I feel like that's also incredibly relevant, especially with everything happening in our schools right now. And I also worked with kids that were in foster care. I worked with kids in inner city Chicago. So I've worked with kids in various circumstances, and I work currently with teenagers just in a volunteer position who are fairly high functioning, doing well. So I think that I would represent the students in our schools and recognize that there's various needs and we need to meet the needs of our students. Thank you, Kevin.
Thanks, Krista. Beth?
Hi, thank you. And thank you to the Boise Metro Chamber and Idaho EdNews for hosting this forum. My name is Beth Oppenheimer, and I have spent my career working in some aspect of education, whether it was at Boise State in higher ed, whether it was in DC and working in junior achievement with K through 12 students. And I currently, for the past 11 years, have been working in the field of early childhood education. I believe that I have a very unique lens of not only supporting our students, but also supporting teachers in our community and making sure that our schools are strong. Being a trustee for the past 6 years, I have learned a lot. I know that it's a very complex system. And, there have been times that I thought, well, why don't we just do this? And understanding the complexities that come along with running a school district and also being in the role as a trustee helped me really bring a valuable lens to this position. And I'm really looking forward to the next 6 years. Over the past 6 years, we've had some good times and we've had some really challenging times. And it has stretched the way that we process things and the way that we approach things. And so I'm just looking forward to the next 6 years. So thank you.
Great.
Thank you, Kevin. I like to give a general background of my family and experience because it's literally why I'm sitting here in front of you today. Just generally speaking, I've been working with youth, specifically junior high and high school, for about 20 years in various churches that I've attended as a youth leader and a volunteer. So I feel like I've got a good handle on that particular area. But more importantly, like Krista, I'm a dad. I've got 5 kids who have been or are in the Boise School District at some point during their education. And, my background, my family, it's a little unique. I've got my 2 oldest boys. They're my biological boys. I just had my oldest graduate from Bora High School. He's moving on to college, so that's exciting for us. My next two, my son and daughter, they are a sibling set, and we adopted them about coming up on 10 years ago now. And then my youngest, who is not so young anymore, she's 12. We fostered her from the time she was an infant until about 3 years old. She went back to her biological father, but we've been blessed to have her still in our lives quite a bit. And we actually had her up here last year for a time, and she was enrolled in the Boise School District. And so I give that background because of my family structure. Some of my kids have some very unique needs. And my son, for example, my adopted son, he, because of the trauma in his past, he really thrives and needs structure and routine. And when he was going to West, that was provided to him, and he knew when his classes were, he knew when his sports were, and what the bus schedule was. And then COVID came along and pretty much blew all that up, and completely understand that. And the difficulty I had was that I felt like the district, they just were not listening to a lot of parents who were, myself included, who were saying, look, we need to get back to in-person schooling as soon as we can, because it really had an impact on my family in a negative way and on my son. And I felt like a lot of my pleas and pleas of other parents were falling on deaf ears. And so that kind of started my motivation here to run. And it's pretty much why I'm sitting here in front of you today. Thank you.
Thank you all. So let's jump into some questions. And what we'll do here over the next hour is we'll rotate around. So no one of you will have to answer first or get to answer last. So let's jump into some questions. Krista, I'm going to start with you. And I apologize for butchering your last name. I have one that gets mispronounced a lot, so I'm sensitive to that. But let's jump into questions. I'll start with you, Krista. What do you consider the top priority for the Boise School District, and how would you address it?
Well, I think there's a number of top priorities for the Boise School District. One of my top priorities will be addressing the tone of the learning environment in our education system. I don't hear a lot of people talking about this, but for me, it's a major issue. And I think it's because of my background as a social worker that I see what's going on with our students in schools. And I think there's really key things missing for them in the learning environment. Number one, I see that there's a lack of respect. All of our schools tout respect is one of our values, but students aren't really honoring that value in the classroom. And I feel like that needs to be addressed immediately within our schools. And not just for our students, but also for our educators. That's a really difficult environment to have to go into and teach in. And so I really want to focus on addressing that within our schools. And I think one of the reasons that we're seeing a lack of respect in classrooms is we've taken authority from teachers in classrooms. So that's something that makes it really difficult to manage consistently a classroom with rules and expectations when we can't have there's no authority to say, no, that's not okay here, and stand up. So for me, that will be a major priority that I will work to address within our schools. I know that there's other additional priorities for me in regards to education and improving and building our education system. But for me, my top priority will be working within the learning environment and fixing the social structure that exists currently in our learning environments.
Okay, thank you. Beth.
Hi, thank you for that question. I think one of the biggest challenges that we see is being able to continue to offer all of our students opportunities to engage in their learning, whatever that looks like for them. And what I mean by that is that in the Boise School District, we offer a vast array of opportunities for students who have different learning abilities, whether that is a Montessori program or a GATE program or the Treasure Valley Math and Science or our Dennis Technical Education. Students learn differently, and being able to continue to offer students that the options of how they learn best and supporting each individual student's learning abilities is going to continue to be a big challenge, and I look forward to continuing with the great work that we're doing.
Greg, sorry.
Thank you, Kevin. My top priority is kind of a dual set. And first and foremost is parent choice. And that kind of flows into board transparency. And for me, and I think for most parents in this district, we feel that we are the ones that are primarily responsible for our children's education. And I know that we need to work in conjunction with the schools and particularly the teachers. And I've had wonderful interactions, and my wife has, with my kids' teachers. So that's critical. But I feel like that over the last several years in particular, that a lot of our voices as parents have not been heard or heeded by the district. And there's been a frustration level there. And that kind of dovetails into board transparency. There have been several decisions that the board has made over the past couple of years, very critical policies that have been implemented or decisions made with zero or little parent input at all. And I feel like as a board that putting the parents as a priority and first in line and listening to them, informing them of decisions that are coming up and taking their feedback, to me is critical for the education of our kids, as well as to let us know that our voices are being heard. I recognize that myself and other parents are not going to always see eye to eye with the board, and I understand that and I respect that. However, when your voice isn't heard as a parent, you feel like that you're being shut out of the system completely, and so that's going to be my top priority. Thank you.
A lot of what you can do as a trustee is dependent on what happens at the legislature and decisions that are made at the state level. So I want to ask all three of you, where do you feel like the legislature has supported education? Where do you feel that the legislature has come up short? And on this one, we'll start with Beth, go to Greg, and then Kristen.
Sure. So as someone who has dealt with the legislature quite a bit over the last 11 years, I certainly understand the complexities within the legislature and the decisions that they make. I do feel like it's hard to find a candidate within the legislature that doesn't say that they're pro-education. And everybody has different thoughts and opinions about what that looks like. I think that some of the decisions that the legislature has made over the past several years is, I do believe that the legislature is trying very hard to continue to invest in public education. They've done that through investments in career ladder. The governor has done that in quite a bit of investment in early literacy. And so paying attention to that and really engaging in what's happening there. Sometimes the legislature makes decisions, it kind of ties our hands a little bit, but at the same time, I do believe that they do want what's best for education. That is another body, as we all know, that they do not see eye to eye on certain initiatives and whatnot. But I think it is important for trustees to be at the table, to talk to legislators, not just here in Boise, but across the state, and make sure that we are having our voices heard. We're very fortunate to have the Idaho School Boards Association that helps us be a voice at the legislature. And we are able to, at that grassroots level, be able to share what's happening within our districts with ISBA so that they can help us carry the voice. Our school board is very involved with ISBA, and it's that partnership with all of the education advocates and lobbying groups that is going to help get that word out. So I do think the legislature, sometimes there's good decisions, sometimes there's not, but at the end of the day, it's having those conversations and be able to come together to do what's best for our students and our teachers and our community.
Great.
Thank you, Kevin. And I guess, not being an incumbent, I have the outside view of what's going on. And I appreciate Beth, and we'll hear from Dave on the inside, and maybe I'll get a chance to experience that one day. But I know that, Boise School District is an independent district, has an independent charter, which gives it some, I think, flexibility and some benefits. Although, admittedly, I'm still unraveling those. It's a very old charter, and there's an interesting interplay between the district and the legislature. I do know that, like Beth said, there's everybody in the state house seems to be saying, they support education. And I do know that there has been a significant increase in the budget from the state this year. So that gives the board and all the districts flexibility. I'm not exactly sure how that money's earmarked, but I would hope that each individual district can determine in large part where that goes. But I think definitely extra money for teachers and their compensation and benefits to help us compete with other districts in other states, and hopefully more money for facilities to make sure that we provide those for the students or areas where I see as a parent just looking from the outside in and seeing, daily reports and news stories and things like that, I think that the financial support from the legislature is key here.
Krista.
All right, thank you. So something that I'm sitting here thinking as we're talking through is I also have this outside view of it, but something I think that I bring as a strength to the table that I would offer with the legislature is I am an advocate. I am very good at saying this is what we need to do and helping people see why. So I would definitely use that skill and that strength in working with the legislature. Something that I also think is happening right now with the legislature is I've appreciated that they're saying, Common Core is not working in our state, and that they're trying to address how we need to move forward with education to make it more successful. So in agreeing with Beth and Greg that yes, they support education, it is a top priority in our state, and we recognize there's things we need to do better in our state to educate our students, prepare them for college. I think something else that we need to look at is, politics. There's too much of a play of politics in our schools. And I am finding so much more of that just running for this election that, it doesn't need to be a one side or another side. It needs to be a side of we're on the side of kids and helping them see that. And I think ultimately that's what we want. I don't think that you would find a legislator that would say, no, actually, I don't think kids and education really matter. So I think that it just comes down to helping people see that we need to make decisions that are in the best interest of kids. And it's a collective effort. It's not just it's not just the board. It's not just the legislature. It's working together to make that happen.
Okay. Thank you. And notice that Dave Weegers has joined us now. And thank you for getting in here and catching up with us. I'm going to clean up two things with you, Dave. I'm going to let you do kind of the same introduction that the other three candidates did at the outset. Tell us very quickly a little bit about yourself and how your life experience informs your candidacy.
Great. Thanks, Kevin. First of all, I apologize for not being on time. I had a previously arranged presentation, so buzzed out of that and onto this, which thank you for having this forum. My name is Dave Weegers. I'm currently president of the Boise School Board. I've served on the school board for the past 7.5 years. But more importantly, I guess I'm a former parent. Well, I'm always a parent, actually. But I've been on the school board for 7.5 years. Like I said, I'm president of Idaho Candy Company. I'm a Boise native. I graduated from Boise School, so I came up through Cole Elementary, Fairmont Junior High, Capitol High School. My wife went through Boise schools as well and ended up graduating from Bora High. Her dad was in the first graduating class of Bora High. I have 4 children, 3 graduated from Boise High, and one importantly actually graduated from Frank Church High School. So I've had a different kind of view of how the school district does its work. I also grew up in it with my mom being a teacher at Fairmont Junior High for 15 years. So I've got I guess I'm all in on the Boise School District is what it comes into. And I'm all in on kids. And I, like Krista said, I guess, it really is about kids and how do we make sure that we prepare them in a way that they're working towards the future that they want. So that's really my background. I have a finance and accounting background. I worry about the details. I worry about the process. I read the budgets. I spend the time on those things. And I also put the time in that it takes to be a trustee. And lately that's been, for me, it can be from 10 hours a week to more, depending on the week. I know during COVID, we had 40 meetings in 1 year. And that's a lot of public meetings. But it's, once again, it's important work and we're doing it for the kids.
And Dave, let's stick with you for a minute. The question that I'd asked the other 3 candidates, I'll restate it. I asked all of you to talk about the legislature and the relationship between the legislature and what you can do at the Boise School Board level. Where do you feel that the legislature has supported education, and where do you feel like the legislature has come up short?
Well, it's good to see more funding enter the picture for education. I mean, we've obviously been a little bit behind the 8 ball on that piece. Curriculum has been kind of a back and forth with the legislature a little bit. But what I guess what I didn't know about being a trustee when I first started is, especially as Boise School District trustees and as the Boise School District, we have a certain, I think, position within the educational structure. And it's not always a loved position, but it is an influential position. And that's where I love the use that we do of the Idaho School Board Association. And I've become very involved in that over the past 7.5 years. I wasn't quite sure at the beginning, okay, why do we mess with this? We're really a large district, and does this really fit our needs? But it does fit our needs, and it fits it from a statewide perspective. Because if we can connect with other school districts of varying sizes, with different legislators, with different needs, but also have them realize, hey, we really are interested in what's best for all kids in Idaho, then we can reach out to them. They can work with their legislatures, which normally wouldn't talk to a Boise School District trustee. And that gives us a chance to have influence in the State House in different ways by using that body and those relationships. But it is about key relationships. If you don't do the work and you show up to the meetings and do those things, you don't develop those relationships. So it's much more wide-ranging than attending Boise School District meetings. It's going to other meetings, meeting other trustees, providing resolutions forward. We move forward from the Boise School District more resolutions through the ISBA to the legislature than probably any other school district in the state. And we work very hard at making sure those are fair to all school districts. We ask that question as we're going through this. Does this work? If it doesn't work and we still need to move it forward for our district, we will do that. But typically we try and get partners, we get co-sponsors, and then we can actually make a little bit of dent within the legislature, moving the things forward that we need to move forward to help public education be its very best.
Thank you. So for the next question here, I'm going to start with Greg, and then we'll go Greg, Krista, Dave, Beth. And Greg, this is something you alluded to in your open. You talked a little bit about the district's response to the pandemic. And what I want to do with this question is maybe move the question forward. If science suggests that we're in the middle of another surge, if the local scientific experts and the national scientific experts suggest that there's a need to step up pandemic protections protocols in the schools, how would you approach that?
Thank you, Kevin. And that's a great question, great point. So when the pandemic first started, I understand, as I think all of us do, that was a once in a generation type of an event, and I don't envy Beth or Dave or the other trustees for having to deal with that. And I've said in the past, and I will continue to say, I think that the board handled the beginning of the pandemic well. When we went to online and all virtual learning for a time, I think the district and the board did a great job of getting out materials, the electronic devices, and getting information out and getting organized rather quickly. I think, though, as time has gone on and we've with the development of the vaccine, we've had a lot of studies come out on impact of masks. I think if that comes about again, I think we're in a much better position. And you mentioned, Kevin, the scientists, and obviously my first thing would be to listen to all sides of the science debate, because there's always going to be people on each side, and I understand that. But given the advances we've made already and the readily available vaccines, I think that all that needs to be taken into account for the next step, should we have numbers increase to the impact that they were in the past. So personally, as I said, I'm an advocate for parent choice. So when it comes to things like masks and things, I think that should be left to an individual decision by the parents. I think we have plenty of options between the vaccines, between online learning that should give all parents a right to choose that. But again, not being on the inside of that, I know that the board had multiple meetings with CDH and others, for example. I just would encourage whoever's on the board, if this happens again, that they look at all sides and consult all experts and physicians and doctors in making their decisions. And I would encourage them to recognize that that they should also put the parent choice first on that and see if they can accommodate as many as possible there.
Krista.
I think we've had such a shift from where we started, and I agree. I think, you guys were put into an impossible situation, really, and I feel like that is really important to recognize. So where I think we stand now, we have a lot more information, and I think that we've also seen a major shift in what the virus is doing. Our death rates are not where they were. And if we also just compare it to right next door. So I moved mid-pandemic. We moved here into we were in our home, but we moved our kids over mid-pandemic into Boise school districts for social purposes, that we felt like our kids needed to be over on this side and out of their schools at West Ada. And through that process, I mean, my friends were going to school across the road and they were like, oh man, sucker, like you totally lost out. Your kids don't get to go to school, all this different stuff, because they were comparing right next door of a completely different situation, a completely different handling of the pandemic. And for me, I had to look at, we were doing what we felt like was the right thing to do for our kids. And so we were able to stay the course on that. But now I think we have information that's different than we had originally. We see West Ada did handle it differently than Boise did. And was there statistical significance in their handling of it versus ours? No, not really. When we look at the actual data of it, there weren't like a lot higher numbers over in their side of town versus our side. I mean, I just think we have to look at this going forward with, what information do we have now? How are we going to go forward differently? I think having kids on screens for 6 to 8 hours a day has played out in a huge way for their mental health. I mean, we're seeing significant increase in depression and anxiety. We had, you look at what the American Academy of Pediatrics is telling us. They say kids on screens 2 hours or less a day. There was science backing that. And I feel like we kind of ignored that fact. We ignored what was going on with kids because we were so hyper-focused on what health professionals were saying. Health professionals in regards to COVID, not health professionals in regards to mental health and what was going on with kids. So I think, again, we have to just move forward. We can't change what happened in the past, and we have to look at where we're at right now. But I think the fallout from COVID is significant, and we can't just say, well, everyone's going to mask up again and we're going to keep kids out of school again, because COVID numbers will probably go up. But that doesn't mean that COVID death rates are going up. It's going to be spread. We might be in red again because it's going to be significant in our community. But the virus and how we are reacting to it now has shifted. And so I think we just have to move forward and have a change in perspective now that we're going forward.
Okay. Dave.
So I used to have not gray hair, and now I have gray hair. That's what COVID did to me. It was an impossible situation, but we tackled it and we worked hard at it. We tried to create policies, processes, and procedures, and that's really what the school district is all about. As a matter of fact, last night in the school board meeting, we reviewed our health and safety plan and passed our health and safety plan, which is very similar to the one that we had last spring. But it is a continuous improvement process. I mean, like both Krista and Greg said, the world has changed and the virus has changed itself. And we need to pay attention to those changes, and we need to look at those things. But we also, we need to look at experts within our communities who we prefer to use. So we talk to the head doctors at St. Al's and St. Luke's on a regular basis. We consult with Central District Health on a regular basis. And those help provide information. Those are our health professionals that we rely on. And since they're viewed as our community experts, I think those are probably our best folks to rely on. We didn't know that we were going to need to become community health experts as trustees. And we're not, frankly, and I don't know that that's our role, but we need to take advice and input from those folks, synthesize that, and then come up with the best answers. But when our hospitals are filling up or full, and then there needs to be some action taken occasionally. I hope we never get there again. It looks like now we won't. But this is part of the role of being a trustee. The answers aren't always easy, and we had to push and prod, but now I think, since we've been through it before, we have a chance to set up this continuous improvement process where we can look at what we've done, move forward to the future, make sure we still involve all stakeholders, which includes students, parents, teachers, staff, administration, and regular and outside patrons of the community as well, because we affect all different kinds of families with our school district. So it's an ongoing process. We've learned some how to handle it. We'll probably never fully learn how to handle it, but we'll continue to get better.
And Beth.
Thank you. Again, this has been a very complex situation that we've been in. And Kevin, if I understand your question, it wasn't necessarily directed at COVID specifically, but a pandemic in general. And,
we can broaden it out to a public health situation.
we don't know what we don't know. Just like as COVID came along, there was no playbook. We had no idea. I think that there was a reason that our governor, he allowed he didn't make a statewide decision on how to navigate COVID. He let the individual school districts make that decision. And he did that because every community is unique and every community has varying needs and aspects. If you look at some of our smaller rural districts, it didn't make sense for them to close down schools because they didn't have high spread of COVID in that school. So they were in a different situation than the Boise School District was. That being said, we have learned a lot. I agree with Dave in that it has allowed us to reflect on how we respond to something like this, how we move forward, and putting together the health and safety plan, which we had several conversations about what this looks like. And, and I think that we've learned a lot in terms of feedback from parents and students and educators and whatnot. We're never going to make everyone happy. When we were going through this and we did all the parent surveys, there was a point where it was literally split in half. What do we do from parents and other stakeholders? And we had to make a decision, and we had to look at the experts. I think moving forward, if we were to experience, God forbid, another pandemic, whatever that looks like, I think that we have a fairly good playbook now from lessons learned and how we move forward, continue to rely on the experts, continue to listen to a variety of different stakeholders. And at the end of the day, we have to make a decision. I think a few things that have come out of the last couple of years, Krista, you mentioned the online learning. That doesn't work for every student. But I've also heard from a lot of parents, and which is why we've kept the online opportunity, is because some students are thriving with that. And so again, it's offering choice to students and their individual learning abilities to be able to navigate how they learn best and what works best for their family. So there have been some good things that have come out of this. Was it perfect? No. But I think that at the end of the day, we've come out of it, and we'll continue to learn and we'll continue to grow and do what's best at the end of the day for our students and our families.
Okay. So for this next question, I'm going to start with Dave, and we'll go Dave, Beth, Greg, Krista on this one. Dave, you alluded to this in your questionnaire, the all-day kindergarten decision that the board made earlier this year. You decided to adopt all-day kindergarten. It's going to lead to fairly limited half-day kindergarten options for parents who want that, but you're going to all-day kindergarten. Talk about why you went that route and how you would measure success going forward. So for Dave and Beth, I want you to talk about the decision and how you measure success. And for Krista and Greg, talk about whether you support the decision and how you would view the all-day kindergarten process if you're elected.
Thanks, Kevin. All-day kindergarten, I am thrilled that we've been able to institute that. Actually, I remember, so I was appointed to the board 7.5 years ago. That was one of the first conversations I remember having on the board is, okay, why aren't we doing all-day kindergarten? Why aren't we doing more pre-K, or at least making those offerings available to families? Because the research shows that's how we can impact kids, especially on an early level. This is actually as part of my presentation this morning a little bit is, what I love about all-day kindergarten is the biggest impact it has, I think in some ways, is for the first grade teachers. The kids show up already knowing how to do school. They are ready to go. They understand, okay, here's how you do a line. Here's how you wash your hands. Here's how you go to recess. I know my colors. I know my letters. I know my shapes. And then we can go to work on that. Instead of where our first grade teachers, they have half a class that's been to kindergarten and half a class that hasn't been to kindergarten. And they spend a ton of time working with those children, trying to get them up to speed with the rest of the class, which is a difficult thing for a teacher to do, but that's their job and they're skilled at it and they make it happen. So I'm looking forward to that opportunity where, in mind you, kindergarten is not mandatory in Idaho. So there will still be some students that don't start at that same level, and that's fine. And we will still reach them where we are because that's what public education does. But I'm looking forward to that opportunity where, and we may not see this for maybe 2-3 years out. I would guess it's going to take that long for it to filter through our system. But as we get to that 3rd grade, where we want every child to read by 3rd grade, I think we're going to see some very good increased numbers on those. So we're going to see that by testing somewhat. And I hope to see those numbers grow. That is the goal. And that's what people pay a lot of attention to. But we're going to see it just by classrooms. We have our schools are very varied in the Boise School District. We have some that are very high, maybe 80% free and reduced lunch. And we have some that are very little. And so you see a great difference. And some of those that are very little, I don't think you're going to see that great an increase because either the kids are in half-day kindergarten already, or their parents were paying for kindergarten for their kids to go there full time. And what I love about this is it's evening the playing field for the families who weren't able to afford kindergarten. It gives them the same opportunities than like a family of mine where we put that as a priority for our children. We sent them to kindergarten. I mean, they were going to go, and they knew that. They went to preschool. They were going to go. We felt that as parents, it was important to us. But once again, that's a parental choice option. It's good that we have those choices, but we want to make sure that those families that have that chance to have kindergarten in place. Kevin, as far as measuring it, how we know we're going to be successful, it's going to be a time will tell thing. I mean, we'll see that some through scores. We'll see that some in classroom management places where I think it will happen. It will be a better outcome for teachers as well. They will have a better impact on children. So I'm not sure I got all those points, but I got close.
Beth.
Sure. Well, this is certainly an issue that's near and dear to my heart, and I've been advocating for full-day kindergarten across the state for several years. To me, this is about opportunity, and it's about choice. And for years with the Boise School District, we did not have an equitable system. And it was essentially those that could afford it could participate. Those that didn't have that opportunity. And so this was an opportunity to provide this equitable access, both in terms of offering full-day kindergarten in our schools, and then also making sure that it's free for every single student. When we made this decision, and I know that there's a lot of conversations around how that decision was made. We've been talking about this for a long time, and we have been hearing from every single year that we start school, we hear from several parents who say, how come full-day kindergarten is not offered in my school? I really want it. I have to work. I can't, I want this opportunity, whether families have to work or they just want that opportunity for their kids. And so while we didn't do a survey per se right before that decision was made, we have been hearing from parents for years around wanting to have that full day option for their families. Once that decision was made, we were able to do this before the governor's literacy budget even put funding in for school districts to be able to do this. We did hear from some parents that still wanted that half-day option. And what we did was we had various listening sessions across the district. We offered parents the opportunity to respond if they wanted half-day kindergarten. At the end of the day, we heard from less than 20 parents that wanted a half-day option only, and we made that opportunity. We're going to offer half-day kindergarten at Liberty. In terms of the complexity of a system, it was not feasible. It was not in our budget to offer half-day kindergarten facility space in and of itself, to offer half-day kindergarten in every single school along with full day. You physically cannot do that, and we didn't have the budget to be able to do that. But by offering half-day kindergarten in response to parents' wishes around having half-day kindergarten, we now have, in my opinion, the best of both worlds. We have those full-day opportunities for families who want it, but we also have a half-day opportunity. And I will also say that Kindergarten, while it's not childcare, we have working families who have to have childcare for their children some way, somehow. And when a parent has, and this happened in my family too, when a parent has to work or go to school, having that full day kindergarten option really does support working families because that child is somewhere in childcare anyway. And so to us, it really made sense based on the research and the data to have a full day option so that we're providing equitable access to all families who want and need it.
So for Greg and Krista, just to reset the question, just to recap, did you support the decision to go to all-day kindergarten? And if you're elected, how would you assess the program and measure whether it's successful? Greg and then Krista.
Sure. Thank you, Kevin. And this is a great question that kind of reflects why I'm sitting here in front of you today. I agree with Krista that it's really not an us versus them as far as the incumbents go. Admittedly, I wouldn't be here putting my time and my money into this campaign if I didn't have some disagreements with them, with the current incumbents, all of them. But I do support the board's decision to go to full day kindergarten because, again, parent choice is one of my top priorities. But there's often a but with me in involved decision. I will respectfully disagree with Beth. The communication prior to the decision making was not there. I have a parent, close friend, and she's heavily invested in the district and in information on it. And there was little to no communication before the decision was made to go to full day kindergarten. And she happens to have her family where half day is a decision or half day kindergarten is something she wanted. And so, I like to see a contrast. Krista contrasted West Ada with us. My wife teaches in West Ada. The board there, when they have their meetings, they have, I guess you could say their discussions happen at the meetings, and there's often a lot of back and forth and some disagreement. And we don't see that in the Boise School District. And I know that why that is. It's because the Boise trustees have these workshops prior to the general meetings. And that's where I understand a lot of debate happens. Unfortunately, they're during the week, in the middle of the day, so it's difficult for some parents to attend. But they brought this up at one of the workshops about full day kindergarten, and this parent contacted the board and was curious about what was going to happen, and this was not intentional. I don't think it was misinformation, but they were told that the workshop was just to have some discussions based upon pending legislative decisions that year. And then 6 weeks later, the board voted for full day kindergarten and effectively eliminated half day kindergarten on no notice. And so for me, that's the importance of the transparency with the board to make these decisions or to involve the parents at an early stage in these decisions so that they can get. And I appreciate from Beth, she said that they heard from parents who wanted full day kindergarten, and that's great. And I'm glad we have that option. But there was a significant, number of parents that had their option taken out from under them. Now, with that said, I look forward to, I know our numbers in kindergarten are not ideal, and I think they're still good, but they can be better. And so I look forward to seeing the impact that full day has on this. And I think it is going to be a positive. So I do support that in the end.
Okay. Krista.
I have a child going to full day kindergarten, so it feels like a very personal thing to me, right? I will go in to say, number one, I think full day kindergarten is a good thing for our district. I will start by saying I see that as a good thing to push forward with. However, the way it was pushed forward is what I take issue with. I have talked to educators who had no idea what was going on. I feel like when you're going to roll something like that out that's that big, having some collaboration ahead of time is effective. Having teachers and staff feel like they've had a say in what's going on and that they know a little bit about what's going on. Our school had no idea how it was going to work until the very end of the spring term. I have a friend who does not want her child going full day for social purposes. That was not something she would have ever chosen to do. And it's been a real struggle for her. Now, why 20 parents came is because 20 parents came because they said, we'll drive our kids to and from a kindergarten half-day program that's not close to my home. So there wasn't that input ahead of time. And I think where there was this transition time, West Data across the road has sent surveys out and asked parents, what works for you? What would you choose? Again, it's how it was done. It's not what was chosen, it was how it was chosen. And I think that's another, just kind of leads into a bigger issue. As I've been talking to different people in the community and educators, something that people are feeling that's very real is decisions are already made before it's even proposed to the public. So even when these surveys are coming out, it's not to give a measure of come in, say what you think, we'll take all of that into account and then make a decision. People are feeling like decisions are made, and then the next day a 40-page thing is coming out to tell us how we're going to do it. So I think that being on the board requires that transparency. The board is the mediator between the community and the school district. And the board is also the accountability, they hold the accountability standards for the school district. So I think sometimes the board is in line with the school district where it needs to be off to the side, if that makes sense. So instead of just being straight down like this with the school district and the board, and it's like this stacked, they need to be off to the side because they are the connection to the public. They are the ones that are the ultimate governing board. And so again, I'm not going to say I don't think full day kindergarten will be a good thing. I think it is going to be a good thing. I think we're going to see our scores for kindergarten to third grade increase in the reading, and we need that. So I don't say that that is not a good thing. It's that the choice was not given or discussed in the beginning, and that's what I disagree with.
Krista, I'm going to start this one with you as well. I think it's your turn to start a question. So this one feels really timely, given the teacher shortage that we're experiencing statewide and nationally. Specifically, what do you think the school board can and should and must do to support educators? And we'll go Krista, Dave, Beth, Greg.
So I think something that needs to be happening is I think teachers need to just be collaborated with. Our teachers in our district, as I've been learning more about this position and reading more, 75% of them have master's degrees and they've worked 14 plus years. So we are really lucky that we have excellent educators in our district. And as I look at what needs to be happening for them, I think their job satisfaction goes up when they feel like they have some say in what's going on. And I don't know that they always feel that way, just as I just cited with that example. As I have been out asking people, I'm a non-threatening party because I'm not a trustee yet. And so people are talking to me and they'll tell me what they think about things. As I ask questions, they'll say, oh, you really want to know, like, are you mic'd up? Am I going to get fired? The fact that someone would even say that to me tells me a lot. People don't feel like they have a voice in what's going on. There needs to be a voice for our teachers. What they're doing is so important. They are essential for our children, and what they care about is our kids. That's why they got into it in the first place. So I just think we need to give a voice. It needs to be more powerful. They need to feel like, change is coming about in our district because I said what I thought needs to happen in my classroom. And they need more respect, as I already stated in the beginning. They need authority in their classrooms. We've taken everything that was successful for our generation. You look back, what was expected in a classroom for your behavior? How are you expected to teach, to act to your teacher or your peers? And if you didn't do those things, what happened? There was consequences. I know students went to detention. There were things that were happening that just aren't happening anymore. And they're only happening for the really huge, big things. We're ignoring the other things that need to be happening. And I think that would bring a greater quality to what educators are experiencing in our school district.
Dave.
Thanks, Kevin. Teachers are high on my list. I think the magic happens in the classroom, and it always happens between a teacher and a student. And our board is really focused on supporting educators. And I think that's why you'll see all the incumbents actually were endorsed by the BEA. And so the teachers have had our back, so they do feel supported. Krista said we were really lucky to have the teachers that we have. I don't think we are. I think it's been very intentional for our board to attract and retain the very best teachers in the state. And you say there's a teacher shortage, and there is in the state. But what it hasn't happened is at the Boise School District, we're actually in pretty darn good shape as far as having certified teachers in place already. We're not having those shortages, and that's because we're attracting and retaining the best teachers. They are coming from other districts to work for the Boise School District because they do feel supported, because they do feel like we do care about them and what happens in their classrooms. Does that happen for every teacher? Absolutely not. We have over 4,500 staff. It's a big, complex organization. But we have in place a school board that supports teachers. We have a negotiation process with our teachers that goes year round almost. It will start up again in September. We sign a final contract in June. We go through this process called interest-based bargaining, and we listen to each other's needs and wants at a meeting every month. The trustees are not involved in this process, so the teachers do have a chance to speak freely. And they come up with the contract at the end of the day that is usually approved with a 96 to 99% rate, which is fairly unmatched in most school districts. But once again, it's hard work, it's constant two-way communication, and it's respect from both sides. And it's, like I said, the teachers are our most important part of our machine. Without them, we can't teach students, which is what we do. So it's a simple question for me.
Beth.
Thank you, Kevin. I think that we're very fortunate to have the quality of educators in our school district. And I agree with both Krista and Dave in that, you can't have a high quality education system without our teachers. One of the things that Dave alluded to is our partnership with the BEA, the Boise Education Association. And that is an organization that allows teachers to have their voice. And as Dave said, the whole negotiation process that we work through with the BEA that the trustees are not involved in, that's at the administration level. We're very, very fortunate in our district to be able to have that partnership and be able to hear through the BEA how our teachers are feeling, what are their needs, and what's going well and what's not going well. And so we're very unique in the Boise School District that we do have that relationship and we do have that partnership and we do have that trusted voice, so that as a trustee, we can learn from a variety of different teachers through that lens of the BEA. We are also very open to talk to teachers. We're just coming off a lot of new educator orientations. We've got a lot of lunches that have happened, and several of us have been able to attend those and really get in front of teachers and be able to hear from them what's working, what's not working. But I think at the end of the day, we are very fortunate that we are able to support our educators. As Dave mentioned, we have educators coming from across the state who want to be part of the Boise School District. And with, as Dave said, over 4,500 staff, you're never going to please everyone. But I think that the numbers of support through the BEA and negotiations, I think that speaks loudly to how we are supporting our educators.
Greg.
Thank you, Kevin. First and foremost, I think that the compensation has to be competitive. And I believe that's the case in the district currently. Everybody knows my wife's a teacher, and if you know a teacher, everybody knows what other teachers make in other districts, but also importantly in other states. We have a couple of nearby states that we need to be aware of what they're paying and giving the benefits as well to make sure that we do attract, but also importantly, as Dave and Beth said, maintain those quality educators. So I am definitely a big advocate for making sure that the teachers' compensation is in line with other districts of our size and that we're obtaining an edge there. And secondly, I like what Dave said about the magic happens in the classroom. And I totally agree with that. And I think that that's why the primary connection on that tiny or that local level there is between student and teacher, but also behind the student, obviously, is the parents. And I've been fortunate to, with most of my kids' teachers, they've been very open, very communicative. But I think to foster that magic, as Dave said, we have to make sure that the teachers are feeling heard. And Beth mentioned that they're having some interaction. I think that's great. I think it needs to continue. And I think that it should start with the local level and the school level. So the parent should have the confidence in the administration that they can go up to the principals and have the discussions there. But if this becomes a bigger issue, I think that they should feel free and have no concerns about going up even higher to the district, and ultimately, hopefully, to be brought to the board if necessary. To feel like that they're, compensating them and making sure that we're listening to them and taking into account their views and what they say is working for their class and their school and what's not. I think those are two critical things.
Beth, I'm going to start this question with you. So much of the national debate about education has centered on hot button topics like critical race theory and indoctrination. And the Boise district was subject to a public records request on this topic about a year or so ago. In your view, is there any legitimacy to these complaints, concerns about CRT and indoctrination in Boise schools? So I'll start with you, Beth, and then we'll go to Greg and Krista and Dave.
Sure. Well, Kevin, as you know, I've been involved in the conversation around CRT and some of these other hot button issues for the past couple of years. What I will say to that is that considering the majority of the people don't even know what CRT is and cannot articulate it outside of a law professor or a higher ed, I will say that it's nonsense. I think that it's just all rhetoric. No one really knows what it is. No one can really describe what that means. I will say that, based on that, I think it's nonsense, and I don't think that we need to be spending any time talking about it. And let's focus on what's actually happening in our classrooms. Let's talk about how we are best supporting our students and providing them with the opportunity to learn to be successful through career and college when they're done with school.
Greg.
Sure. Thanks, Kevin. And yeah, I mean, part of the problem is, what do you define critical race theory as? Generally, specifically, whatever. And I know everybody is all over the map on it. I see it in the classical way of it's this intersection between society and race, and there's a group of people out there that are teaching that whole institutions and whole areas of our society are fundamentally racist just by definition, and nothing can change that. And I wholeheartedly disagree with that, and I wholeheartedly disagree that should ever be taught in our schools. This is one of the problems, I think, Beth, by just dismissing it out of hand. I think that's a real problem. This is happening in our schools. I'm not saying it's widespread. I'm not saying it's happening every day or every teacher, but I've heard from parents, and there are instances where lessons are being taught of that. So I don't think it's a huge problem. I don't even think it's technically allowed to be taught in our schools. That doesn't mean that it's not happening. And I think to shut this off completely and say, oh, it's not happening, and turn a blind eye to it is a mistake. Again, it's not. I don't think it's a widespread issue, but that if we continue to just say, oh, it's not happening, it's not there, then it's going to become a bigger problem. So for me, it's just, again, being open to listening to the parents, understanding, and then actually investigating. If there's some sort of a claim made that it's being taught in some form, look at it. Doesn't mean it's always going to happen, but at least investigate somehow, and don't just dismiss the parents outright, and see if it's actually happening, and if it is, to take the appropriate remedial measures.
Krista.
So adding on to what Greg just said, I think we have to look at this as there's no place for it in our schools. I think, Beth, that's maybe what you were saying, is there's no place for it in our schools. It's not something that needs to be taught in our education system. We have so many things that need to be taught in education that need to be taught in a stronger way. So this just does not need to be a part of our Boise School District. And I agree with Greg, so I'm kind of bridging between both of them. I agree with Greg that if there are complaints that it is being taught, I won't turn a blind eye to it. I will say, let me look at that. Let me see, because there's no place for it. So I think that both sides of it, no, there's not room for it in our education system. It's not something we need to be addressing and teaching in our education system. And if it's being taught in our education system, I will stand up and say it's not allowed here. We cannot be teaching this, because that is our Idaho state law. So I think we have to support both sides of that, recognizing there's no place for it. And if someone tells me it is going on, I will address that there's no place for it. And I will ask the district to be accountable to make sure it's not in our district at all.
Dave.
Usually it's a pretty simple answer for me. We don't teach it in our schools. If we did hear of instances, we would investigate. we had a statewide indoctrination committee that came into our district offices for 4 hours going through all our things and found absolutely nothing. And those are the people that really wanted to find something, and they could come up with nothing. So for me, it's a thing against public education in general. And, I'm happy to have conversations about it. I'm happy to, if we feel like it's an issue, we'll do it, but we haven't found those issues. We haven't found any instances where we're doing that. And we will, if it does come up, we'll address it.
Greg, I'm going to start this question with you. Earlier this year, the Nampa School Board drew national attention when trustees decided to remove 22 books from the library shelves. As a prospective trustee and also the incumbent trustees, can you envision a scenario where you would support removing books from library shelves? So we'll start with Greg. We'll hit Krista and Dave and Beth on this one.
Thanks, Kevin. To say that's a loaded question is an understatement, but I've gone through the policies, and let me step back. Boise School District has specific policies that cover these kind of instances, and I know the trustees can probably speak to this better than I can, but I've reviewed them, and I appreciate that. I support those policies. One of the policies allows parents to request that if there's a book or some materials they don't agree with, that they be able to have their kid opt out of that. And I support that. One of the concerns in reading those policies I had, though, was what I didn't see was anything that says that's not going to have a negative impact on their kids. And that's one of my big issues, is that if there are decisions made to opt out individually by parents and students, that doesn't negatively impact them in their school environment at all. So I do support the policies. And in fact, I will say the policies that are in place do allow, subject to review by committees and ultimately going up perhaps to the board for final decision, they do allow for materials and books to be removed from libraries and classrooms. So that is out there. But I will say that I've read those policies and I support them as written, subject to my caveat that I always want to make sure that there's no negative impacts on students and parents for them making these kind of decisions. So if I was elected, I would continue to support those policies and maybe, like I said, tweak them a little bit to make sure that the kids have that protection from their, that there's no adverse impact to them.
Yeah. Krista.
Kevin, I've been shocked at how many people have written to me and asked me about this. It is such a big issue in our community right now. And I've been shocked by it. So I agree. I think the policies in place at Boise School District, it's not just like a trustee and a group of trustees can just wipe out books like what has happened. It's a layered approach. And I think that's important to mention, that it's not just going to one governing body to make that decision. There's a committee in place to make decisions about whether this book is appropriate in the school or not. And I believe, and again, the incumbents will be able to speak to this, but I believe that it only comes to the trustees if it can't be resolved within that committee. And I would assume that that's a pretty rare thing, if ever, that it comes up outside of that committee, because I'm assuming that they would be able to address this at a lower level so that trustees are not using power in this governing body to say none of these books should be here and start checking off a list. I will say, I feel like it's incredibly important that we recognize whatever we're putting in front of students needs to be emotionally appropriate for them. So sometimes we think, oh, they need to be taught this, but when do they need to be taught that? When is that appropriate for them to have that education? And we often do not look at the emotional side of what they're experiencing. If there's pictures in the book that have content there that is pornographic in any form, I would say there's no room for that in our schools. Again, we're talking issues in the midbrain, and there is not room for pornographic books in the Boise school. So you ask if there would ever be something that I would say, no, there's not room for that. I'm saying it right now. There's no room for pornographic books in the Boise School District. In addition to that, again, I just think it's a layered process, and I think that's a good process. So I support the process that's in place.
Dave.
Well, we do have a process in place, and we have a committee in place that can take teachers' things. The problem that happened, like in the Nampa School District, is the trustees chose not to support that process, and they invented their own process where they banned books. So that's why I guess trustee elections are important because trustees do have that power to do that. I am a big process policy guy. We have them in place. It serves us well. It's important that we follow those. You know, like Greg said, parents can opt out of lessons. They can opt out of books. We give them that option. And we do that without repercussions for their students. They have that choice. But we need to have process in place where maybe if we do have something, you know, that it would come up to a committee that first looks at it, and parents look at it, and students look at it, and teachers and administrators and librarians. This is what they're skilled at. This is what they're supposed to do. Let those people do their work. And then if they want to make a recommendation to the board, hey, this needs to be banned, then we would consider that as a board, and I would do my homework on it and try and understand that. But once again, it's about process for me. It's not about, oh, we're a group of trustees, we know better than the process in place. I want to go through those long processes and make sure that we make the best decisions possible.
Beth.
Yeah, I don't have too much to add more from Dave and Krista and Greg. I do think that it's wonderful that we do have a process in place. It does work. I can't think of an instance where something like this has come to the board level. That's not to say that it won't. I will say at the end of the day, it's a slippery slope. Once a board strays from the process and starts making decisions, you know, what one person thinks is appropriate, another person might not, and vice versa. And so trusting in the process, I do support the policies that we have in place. I think that they were obviously very intentional, and the committees that we have, if this were to come to a board level, we would have that discussion. But again, we have to let the process take its place, and we have not had an issue yet. And I honestly hope that we don't.
We have about 7 minutes left. All four of you covered a lot of ground. We've hit a lot of topics. I want to ask a question that sort of ties together a lot of what we've talked about here this past hour. School trustees across the state, across the nation, are facing maybe more scrutiny than they have in the past. And we've touched on some of the reasons why: the pandemic, some of the social issues that are facing education. So the question I have for you, the flip part of the question is, why do you want this volunteer job, given everything that's facing school trustees? But maybe the more thoughtful way to look at that question is, why do you want this job, and how do you see the role of a school board in the year 2022? And we'll start that one with Dave, and then Beth, and Greg, and Krista.
I love this job, and I tell people that regularly. I mean, as crazy as it might seem, I'm investing a ton of my time, my talent, and my treasure, you know, in this position. And it's because I care about my community. Born here, lived here, raised my kids here, want my kids to come back here. And I view it as maybe the best way I can spend my time investing in the future of my community. My goal is to run this board in a way that's transparent, it's accountable, with processes that are in place that may take a long time. One area I feel like we could, get better at is communication, whether that's involving all stakeholders or two-way communication or telling our stories better. I think that's important as well. But I think I can still add a lot of value to this board. I'm very good at listening to all, whether it's trustees from left or right, or parents are left or right, and it's not even left and right, it's just different ideas. And we need to synthesize those and still come up with, once again, the final product is what's best for our kids, which in the end will make our community better. And I'm just invested. So thank you.
Beth.
Yeah, that's a good question. And I get asked that question all the time. Why do you want to continue doing this? I really do love it. At the end of the day, it has been challenging the last couple of years, but I love being able to volunteer my time to add some value to the school district, whether it's from a parent perspective, whether it's from an education policy or advocacy perspective. I think that we have one of the best districts in the entire state. I'm really proud of the district that we have. I'll also say that, and I've referred to complexities a lot throughout this conversation, and it is a very complex system, and it takes a lot of time to learn all of the ins and outs of just the operations of the district, but also how policies are made and how decisions are made and all of the different aspects within the school district. It takes a long time. I mean, I remember just even 3 years into it and even 6 years into it, I'm still learning. We have board meetings and workshops and committees, and I find myself saying, wait, we do what? I mean, this is somebody that has been doing this for 6 years and continuously learning the complexities of how things work, which allows me every year to make better decisions. So I want to continue with what I have learned of the school district over the past 6 years and continue in an effort to support our community. I am a firm believer that strong schools make a strong community. I'm very vested in ensuring that our students continue to have the opportunities to learn, that our teachers are supported, that our families are also supported, and at the end of the day, just supporting our community. So it is to me, it's the most important volunteer work that I have ever done. And I just look forward to continuing to learn and provide value and a unique lens to the conversation.
Greg.
Thanks, Kevin. And you said at the top that trustees are, school district trustees and board members are finding themselves under increased scrutiny these days. And I say good. I say any elected official should recognize that they're going to be subject to scrutiny. And I think that's a good thing because they are in a position of authority and they were elected there. And especially when you're talking about the welfare of our kids, there's nothing that's more important to me than that. And so you said, why are we running? That's why I'm sitting here. And I don't question Beth or Dave's motives. I think they have the kids' interests at heart. I totally agree with that. I think so do Krista and I. And I think we all have our kids and the rest of the district's kids' best interests, as well as the teachers and the staff. But for me, quite frankly, I have disagreements with the way that the current board has been handling that. And I get back to the transparency issue, and Dave's right. Communication is key. If communication was better and there were more transparency, I wouldn't even be here. I'm investing a lot of time and a lot of my own money as well in this campaign. I'm taking it very seriously. We have a grassroots campaign. It's a lot of my friends, a lot of parents in the district that are willing to help out. I've been blessed with my career, but I'm a husband, I'm a dad, I have a business that I need to run. So yeah, even just campaigning is taking a lot of time. And I put in a lot of time in making comments and attending board meetings, as Dave and Beth know. So I'm here because I think it's worth it, because I think my kids and other kids in the district are worth it. And I think that I would bring a new opportunity and a new point of view to the board. And again, I think transparency is at the top of my list, and that would be my main function and my main effort. And should I have the privilege of being elected? Thanks.
Krista, last word to you.
I really see things are missing for our kids in our community. And that's why I'm doing this. It's not, it's been actually really challenging. And your question, Kevin, as to why, I've woken up so many mornings asking myself, why am I doing this? And it's really been difficult. I've been posed as this right-wing extremist that's going to be disruptive and going to be divisive in a polarizing world. There's been so many things that have said, and I'm like, no, I'm not. I'm trying to be constructive. I want to build our schools up. I want to build up our kids. I see things that are happening, and I care about our community. I was raised here in Idaho, and I feel like I gained an education here that still is with me. And that's an education of being respectful. It's a code that I live by. I like to call it the Idaho code. And it's living by respect. It's living with courtesy. It's living with kindness and honesty and hard work. And I don't feel like our kids are getting that. And I feel like the education system is a critical way we can help get them that way of living. And they're not getting that because we've just gotten to a point in society where anything goes for kids. They can do whatever they want. we're so worried about lawsuits. We're so worried about all these other things. We're not doing what's best for kids. Kids need structure. They need responsibility. They need consistency, and they need rules. And they're not getting that in school for consistently. I won't say all kids aren't getting it. My daughter's getting it. She's getting it in my house. So she goes to school and it's translating over to school. For kids that are not getting that, it's not translating over to school. And I think our community needs it. People are coming here from all over because they're attracted to it. They're attracted to the way we live. They want to live like our community because they see that there's goodness here in Idaho, and we've got to keep it here. We have to help it translate into the next generation. I have a very unique perspective that no one else on the board will offer. As a mental health professional and experience working with teenagers, I know what works for kids. I know how to help our kids. I know how to actually get in and start solving this problem. So that's why I'm running for the board. It's not because I want to blow everything up. It's not because anything that's been claimed so far. And I really naively, I think I got in and thought, oh, the BEA, they're going to love me because I have a perspective no one else has. Oh, the school district, they're going to love me. The current trustees are going to love me because I offer something that's so needed right now. 70% of kids are dealing with mental health following COVID. I have a perspective to address that. And I feel like I'm putting it out there and I'm fighting. I had no idea how much work this campaign would be, just trying to fight against money and against name recognition in a community. But what I have is I have a voice and I have experience. And that's why I'm doing this, because I care about our kids and our community.
I want to thank all four of you for joining us today and answering questions. And I want to thank you also for responding to our written questionnaire. We covered a lot more ground in that questionnaire. So if you want more information from these four candidates, go to idahoednews.org and you can read what the candidates said in their own words. To recap again, this is race number 1 in the Boise School District. These four candidates are running for 2 6-year terms. The top 2 vote getters are elected, and that election is on September 6th. So if you watched this long, I assume you are going to vote, but if you're at all on the fence, please vote and make your voice be heard. Thank you all.
Thank you, Kevin.
Thank you, Kevin. Thank you, everyone.
Yeah, thank you.
Thanks a lot, gang.
All right, sign on to the next one, right?
Yes, sir. Yeah, fantastic. I think that went really well. I'm going to take. I'll